For decades, if you thought about India's military, you probably pictured Russian jets or French submarines. A huge customer, for sure, but not really a builder. Well, that whole story is being flipped on its head. We're talking about a full-blown revolution happening right now. A massive shift from being one of the world's biggest importers to a really ambitious exporter. Okay, let's get into it. And this quote, right here, gets straight to the heart of it. This isn't just about tanks and planes. It's a massive economic story. What this is telling us is that there's real money, long-term government contracts, and a huge strategic push behind all of this, all happening in one of the most important regions on the planet. This really sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. If you need just one number to grasp how huge this change is, this is it. 34 times. Let that sink in. That's the growth in India's defense exports since just 2013. This isn't some slow and steady climb. We're talking explosive, almost unbelievable growth, and it's probably the single best piece of evidence that a fundamental shift is happening. So let's unpack this boom. Because, this didn't happen by accident. It's the result of some very deliberate government policies, shifting global dynamics, and a clear national strategy to stop just buying and start building its own advanced military tech. For most of its history, India was really dependent on other countries for its military hardware. And that, of course, can create some serious vulnerabilities. But now, that entire narrative is flipping. The big goal is self-reliance, or Atmanirbhar Bharat, and it's starting to turn the country into a credible and pretty competitive global supplier.
All right, talk is cheap, but the numbers tell the real story. In these next few slides, we're going to dig into the hard data that's fueling this whole industrial revolution. This is the proof behind that incredible 34x figure we just saw.
You can't build a massive industry without the cash to back it up, right? And the investment here has been steady and serious. You're seeing a consistent growth rate of over 7% in the total budget, and even better, almost 8.5% for capital outlay, which is basically the money for all the new, modern equipment. It shows a real long-term commitment. But it's really interesting to see where all that money actually goes. That 26-ish% for capital outlay is the fuel for all the new stuff. But you can also see the pressures. Almost half of it goes to just day-to-day running costs, and nearly a quarter goes to pensions. So for India's defense planners, it's this constant, tricky balancing act. So where does India fit into the global picture? Well, at number 5, it's definitely in the big leagues. But look a little closer at those numbers and you see the real story. See that huge gap between India's budget and what China and the US are spending? That gap is exactly why building a cost-effective homegrown industry isn't just a nice idea. It's an absolute strategic necessity. So how did all this happen? This incredible growth isn't just some happy accident. No way. It's being driven by a really powerful policy engine right at the heart of the government's entire economic strategy. And at the core of it all is this one big idea. Make in India. The concept itself is simple, but it's incredibly ambitious. The goal is to transform the country from a place that just puts together foreign kits into a hub that actually designs, develops, and builds high-tech stuff for the world. And the defense sector is meant to be the star player. And these are the specific tools they're using to make it happen. The production-linked incentives, think of them as cash bonuses for hitting your manufacturing targets. Those positive indigenization lists are fascinating. They're basically do not import lists, forcing the military to buy from Indian companies. And then you have opening the doors to 74% foreign investment, which is a clear invitation for global giants to bring their tech and money into India.
And here is the big, audacious goal. 3 lakh crore rupees. That's about $36 billion in domestic defense production by 2029. I mean, that is a massive jump from where things are today. And it shows a huge amount of confidence from the top that this strategy is actually going to work.
Of course, policies and targets on paper are one thing. The real action is happening on the factory floors. So let's shift gears a bit and look at the actual companies driving this and some of the real-world pressures they're facing.
So meet the titans. These are the huge state-owned companies that are really the backbone of this whole industry. HAL builds the fighter jets, BEL handles the high-tech electronics and radar, and Mazagon Dock builds the warships. And just look at those order backlogs. They have guaranteed work lined up for years, sometimes even decades, which gives them incredible stability.
But it is not all smooth sailing. Here's a perfect example of a real-world headache they have to deal with. While the price of your standard construction steel might be going down, the super specialized steel plates you need for warships is actually getting more expensive. This kind of volatility in raw materials can just eat away at the profits of a company like Mazagon Dock. It's a huge headwind.
So the crucial takeaway here is that even with all this amazing growth, there are some major challenges. I mean, when 80 to 90% of your business comes from just one customer, the government, that's a bit of a risk. There are still critical tech gaps, like jet engines, that have to be imported. And these defense projects take forever to complete, which can really strain your finances. Getting over these hurdles, that's the next big test. Okay, let's zoom back out, because this whole domestic story has enormous implications for India's place on the world stage and for the shifting balance of power, especially right in its own backyard. And this puts the whole strategic reason for this push in the starkest terms possible. When your next-door neighbor is outspending you by more than 3-to-1, you simply cannot win by just importing the most expensive foreign tech. It's not sustainable. Building a powerful, cost-effective domestic industry isn't just a choice, it is a matter of national security. And this is why it matters to everybody else too. A more self-reliant India is a much more capable partner for countries like the US, Japan, and Australia in the Indo-Pacific. When India can build its own ships and missiles, it can do a better job patrolling vital sea lanes, helping out friendly nations, and acting as a stabilizing force in one of the most important parts of the world. It's a classic case of industrial strength translating directly into geopolitical muscle. So we end with this huge question. The growth is undeniable, right? The ambition is crystal clear, and the strategic need is absolutely urgent. All the pieces seem to be falling into place. But whether India can overcome those last few big challenges will be the difference between a temporary boom and the birth of the world's next great defense superpower.